Welcome to another Isolab Creations video. In this video I'm going to revisit this heart design to show how to do single cross stitches or how to change colour in single squares. Just a bonus tip, if you want to position your design on the cloth, you can use pins to mark out the centre and edges. Pins can be easily moved if you want to move your design in a different position. I use pins so I can easily start the design wherever I want. For this heart, I am starting at the bottom. I'm actually starting with the 3 stitches above the bottom tip to show how I would do a single stitch on another row with the same colour. I'm also assuming you have watched my video on how to stitch neatly and uniformly. As a reminder, we are hiding the tails under the front of the design to keep a neat back for a project where you can see the back, such as tablecloths or blankets. If you haven't seen that video yet, I'll advise that you watch it first before you continue watching this video. The link is in the description. As you can see, it is easy to go down to create the single stitch on the bottom row and then go back up to finish off the row above it. Keeping it neat at all times. This is just a preference of mine, but I like to do one colour at a time, so I'll stitch every square that uses the same colour before swapping to the next colour. So with this heart, I will take note at where the colour changes and leave the gap and stitch around it. So this is a demonstration of how I stitch. And as you gain experience, it is easier to change directions and rows to fill a section with the same colour. This part is sped up. I don't usually cross stitch this quickly, but this is just to show you pretty much where I put my stitches when I'm doing a project. And as you can see there, I'm leaving one little square to create it with a different colour. I do advise for you to take your time with your cross stitching. Please don't rush it. It's like any other form of art. You want to be careful with it, take your time, make sure that it looks all neat and well so that you get a really nice finished product. So now I've finished the red squares and have all these single gaps to be filled with the other colour. To do a single stitch, there are 2 methods I use. The first is the same way I start every other stitch. Just go under the other stitching to hide the tail. You should be using enough floss strands to have full coverage so that the white of the cloth does not show under the stitch. The full coverage will hide the tails of any of the stitches that you do. When I have many squares to hide the tail under, I like pulling the string through so I don't have to cut the tail as close to the stitch as possible. And here I did thread the needle under 3 crosses, but the tail is actually going to be under 2. I'm just going to pull it until it's under 2 stitches. Now I'm just going through the back to create the vertical line and come back to the front. Now the cross stitch can be done. Just like in my previous video where I show you how to cross stitch neatly and uniformly, this is just a reminder stitch on how to create the same stitches going the same way so that the top stitch is always facing the same direction. So here I started the first stitch, which is supposed to go on top, and all I do is slide the needle under the first stitch I created and then go on to the next corner, and that way that stitch will be on top and be the same as every other stitch around it. Then remember, to finish the stitch you'll bring the thread up to the front of the design so then you can hide the tail. Now my camera stopped recording when I was showing how to finish this stitch, so I just created another stitch to show you how I hide it. So go behind the single stitch you just created and then a stitch right next to it. Let's just cut in the excess tail. And the single stitch is done. Do the same with all other color changes. Now I'm demonstrating here on the side how to create the single stitch first. We'll just be leaving the tails where your other stitches are going to be. For a design, you'll have every direction to choose from, but this demo will only have 3 stitches, so I'm just placing both tails on the same side because that's where the next stitches are going to hide it. So now I'm getting the darker color, in this case red, and placing it underneath the stitch I just created. Because all the stitches are supposed to create as much coverage as possible, the dark colors should not show underneath any of your light stitches, so all the tails should stay hidden no matter what color you use. Then just stitch as normal, remembering to keep the tails of the light colored thread, in this case pink, under the stitches you are just about to create. Now I struggled a little bit here because I have a camera that's right in front of me between my face and where my hands are, so I couldn't really see very well what I was doing, but if you don't have a camera in front of you, this is a lot easier, I promise. Now once you finish your stitches, you will end it by going under the stitches that have already been created. Try not to place too many tails under the same stitches. So in this case, instead of me putting the red tail underneath the red stitches, I'm putting under the pink stitch because that has less tails underneath. You want to spread it out. Then all you do is cut the tails. It is easier to use thread scissors. I'm using scissors that are meant to be for fabric, so they're quite thick, so I can't get as close to the stitches as I wanted to, but if this is the case, if you can't find your good pair of scissors, you can easily tuck the tails in with the base of the needle. So that's the first method, and just in a few stitches the threads are held in very nicely and there was no knots required, and it looks just as good in the front and the back. Now this is another method I sometimes use. I don't use this method very often because I don't think it looks as nice, and in some situations you wouldn't be able to use it. But if you don't want to put the tails under the other threads for some reason, you don't have good enough coverage, which, you know, that's something that probably is best to get fixed, but I don't know, it could be the design that's that way. What you can do, you can use half the amount of thread. So for these stitches, because the cloth has really big gaps, I've been using 4 threads. So in this case, I only used 2 threads. And you'll be hiding the tail under its own stitch. So if you just observe what I'm doing, I am hiding the tail under the stitch, and I'm doing the stitch twice, making sure that the top stitch is still the same directions as every other stitch, and then what I'll do is go back into the stitch and draw the tail underneath, and then cut the ends, and that way it just all stays, tails and everything, under the stitch. But as you can see, it doesn't look as neat. I usually find I have to fix up the stitch a bit with the needle using this method just to make sure all the stitches are underneath each other well, but you know, there are some situations that will call for this method. Now, for those of you that don't like to change your threads all the time, or start, stop all the time, this part is for you. So, as you can see, there are a lot of single stitches got to do, but they're all quite the same color. So, one thing that you can do is start the stitch as I'm showing right now, and instead of then completing the stitch by drawing a line under and then cutting the line and then starting again, you can just draw the stitch under the next stitches right next to it by going through the stitch, and yeah, just bring up the line to where the next single stitch is going to start, and just continue cross stitching, and just do this until just past the string underneath the stitches until you've completed all of the cross stitches of that same color. Now, I don't usually like doing this, but if I want to save string or no, I'm just being lazy, this is something I would do. Obviously, you don't want to do this if the stitches are too far apart. Do max 3 stitches apart. Anything more than that, you're pushing it. And the cool thing about this is you don't have to, you're not limited to just stitches that are right next to it. You can actually go onto a diagonal as well. So pulling the stitches like so, and then I'm going across. Sure if you can see what I'm doing very well. It's hard to explain in words. And there. Now I'm doing the stitch that was diagonally to that other stitch that I created. So you can be sneaky like that as well. So these are the finished stitches. So at the end of this video, I'm going to show you the pattern of the bassinet blanket that I made in my previous video. I know some people have asked me for that pattern, so I'm just going to record the book and you can get screenshots or whatnot. And also going to have me do single stitches in real time if you just want to observe it one more time for some reason in real live time. So I hope you enjoy this video, and just let it roll and watch the rest of it. Until next time, bye.